Maria wiped down the same table for the third time, watching the clock on the wall tick slowly toward 2 in the afternoon. Her feet ached from standing for 7 hours straight, and she still had 5 more hours left on her shift. The lunch rush at Danny's diner had been slower than usual, leaving her with just 4 tables occupied and plenty of time to worry about the stack of bills waiting at home. She tucked a loose strand of dark hair behind her ear and glanced at the coffee pot, half empty again. The owner, Danny, was always complaining about waste, but Maria knew that fresh coffee kept the afternoon customers coming back. She walked behind the counter and started brewing a new pot, the familiar smell bringing her a small moment of comfort in an otherwise stressful day. The bell above the front door chimed, and Maria looked up to see a woman entering with a young boy. The woman was elegant in a way that seemed out of place in the small-town diner. Her coat looked expensive and her shoes were definitely not from any store Maria could afford to shop at. The boy beside her was maybe 8 years old, with bright blue eyes and blonde hair that looked like it had been cut at a fancy salon. Maria grabbed 2 menus and walked over to greet them. The woman was already on her phone, speaking in what sounded like Russian or maybe Polish. The boy stood quietly beside her, holding what looked like the newest tablet Maria had ever seen. Even from a distance, she could tell it probably cost more than she made in 2 months. "Welcome to Danny's," Maria said with her best smile. "Table for 2? The woman covered her phone for a moment. "Yes, please. Somewhere quiet if you have it." Maria led them to table 6 near the window but away from the kitchen noise. The diner was quiet enough that any table would have worked, but she wanted to make sure they were comfortable. The woman immediately returned to her phone call, leaving the boy to slide into the booth and start tapping on his tablet. Maria set down the menus and filled 2 water glasses. "Can I start you with something to drink?" The boy looked up at her with those striking blue eyes. "Can I have orange juice?" "Of course, sweetie." Maria smiled at him. There was something about his polite manner that reminded her of her own nephew. "And for you, ma'am." The woman paused her conversation again. "Coffee, black, and maybe a grilled cheese sandwich for him." She looked at the boy. "Alex, is grilled cheese okay?" The boy nodded and went back to his tablet. Maria noticed he kept glancing around the diner like he wasn't used to places like this. Everything about him suggested he came from money, from his clean sneakers that looked brand new to the way he sat up straight in the booth. Maria brought the drinks and took the food order to Pete in the kitchen. Pete had been cooking at Danny's for 15 years and knew every order by heart. He was a good man, but he had a habit of getting distracted and letting things cook too long. Today he seemed more scattered than usual, muttering to himself as he worked over the grill. She returned to check on her other customers. There was old Mr. Patterson reading his newspaper over a cup of coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. He came in every day at noon and stayed until 3, treating the diner like his personal office. 2 construction workers sat at the counter, finishing up their late lunch and talking about the job site. A young mother with a toddler occupied the corner booth, trying to convince her daughter to eat her French fries instead of throwing them on the floor. The afternoon sunlight streamed through the windows, creating patterns on the worn linoleum floor. Maria had been working at Danny's for almost 2 years now, ever since her ex-husband left and she needed to support herself and help with her mother's medical expenses. It wasn't the career she had dreamed of, but it paid the bills, and the regular customers had become like family. She glanced back at table 6. The woman was still on her phone, pacing slightly as she talked. Her voice carried a tone of authority, like she was used to making important decisions. The boy Alex had put down his tablet and was looking around the diner with curious eyes. When he saw Maria watching, he gave her a small wave. Maria walked over with the coffee pot. "More coffee for your mom?" "She's not my mom," Alex said quietly. "She's Elena. She takes care of me." "Oh, I'm sorry. More coffee for Elena?" Alex nodded. "She drinks a lot of coffee. Dad says it's because she has to deal with so many people all the time." Elena finished her call and came back to the table just as Maria was refilling her cup. "Thank you. How much longer for the sandwich?" "Should be just a few more minutes. Pete's working on it now." Elena checked her expensive-looking watch. "I need to make another call." Will you be okay here for a bit, Alex? The boy nodded, and Elena headed outside again, her phone already back to her ear. Through the window, Maria could see her pacing on the sidewalk, her conversation looking intense. She has a lot of work, Alex explained, as if he felt the need to apologize for Elena's behavior. That's okay. Grown-ups have lots of responsibilities. Maria wiped down the table next to theirs. Are you visiting our town? We're traveling. Elena says we're taking the back roads to see how regular people live. Alex said this without any hint of snobbery, just matter of fact. I've never been in a place like this before. Well, we're happy to have you. Danny's has been here for 30 years. It's not fancy, but the food is good and the people are friendly. Alex smiled. I like it. It's quiet and normal. Maria found that comment interesting. What kind of life did this boy live where a small-town diner felt unusually quiet and normal? She was about to ask more when she noticed something that made her stomach drop. There was smoke coming from under the kitchen door. At first, she thought maybe Pete had just burned something on the grill again. It happened sometimes, and usually it was no big deal. But this smoke looked different. It was thicker, darker, and there was more of it than she had ever seen before. She walked toward the kitchen, trying not to alarm her customers. Through the small window in the kitchen door, she could see Pete standing at the grill, but he seemed to be moving frantically, not with his usual calm efficiency. The smell hit her then. It wasn't just burned food. It was the acrid smell of electrical burning mixed with grease and something else she couldn't identify. Her heart started beating faster as she realized this wasn't just a cooking mistake. Behind her, she heard Alex ask, "What's that smell?" Maria turned around, forcing herself to stay calm. The other customers were starting to notice too. Mr. Patterson had looked up from his newspaper, and the construction workers were sniffing the air. She needed to check the kitchen, but something told her to keep an eye on Alex. Elena was still outside, completely unaware of what was happening inside. If this was what Maria feared it might be, every second would count. The smoke was getting thicker now, and she could see it starting to seep around the edges of the kitchen door. Her training from her brief stint as a restaurant manager years. Ego kicked in. She knew the signs of a real fire, and this was looking more serious by the minute. Maria made a quick decision. She walked calmly to the front of the diner and caught the attention of her other customers. Folks, I think we might have a small issue in the kitchen. Why don't you all head outside for a few minutes while we check it out? Mr. Patterson and the construction workers didn't need to be told twice. They had noticed the smoke too and were already reaching for their wallets. The young mother quickly gathered her toddler and headed for the door, but Alex remained at table 6, looking confused and a little scared. Through the window, Maria could see Elena still on her phone, completely absorbed in her conversation. That's when the smoke alarm started screaming. The piercing shriek of the smoke alarm cut through the afternoon quiet like a knife. Maria's heart jumped into her throat as she saw the other customers hurrying toward the exit. Mr. Patterson moved faster than she had seen him move in months, and the construction workers were already pushing through the front door. But Alex was still sitting at table 6, his blue eyes wide with fear. He gripped his tablet tightly, looking around the diner as smoke began to pour more heavily from the kitchen door. Outside, Elena continued her phone conversation, completely unaware that her world was about to change forever. Maria rushed toward Alex's table. "Honey, we need to go outside right now." "What's happening?" Alex's voice was small and scared. "Where's Elena?" "She's right outside. We're going to go meet her, okay?" Maria tried to keep her voice calm, but the smoke was getting thicker by the second. She could hear crackling sounds coming from the kitchen now, and the temperature in the diner was rising fast. Alex started to slide out of the booth, but then he froze. "I can't move," he whispered, his face pale. "My legs won't work." Maria had seen this before. When people get really scared, sometimes their bodies just stop working the way they should. She knelt down beside the booth, putting her hand gently on Alex's shoulder. "Hey, look at me," she said softly. "You're going to be okay. I'm going to help you, but we need to move right now." Through the front windows, she could see Elena still pacing on the sidewalk, her back turned to the diner. The woman was gesturing, with her free hand clearly in the middle of an important conversation. She had no idea that inside, flames were starting to lick around the edges of the kitchen door. Maria looked toward the front exit and felt her stomach drop. A large ceiling beam had fallen across the doorway, blocking their path. The old building's structure was giving way faster than she had expected. Pieces of the ceiling were starting to fall, and the smoke was so thick now that she could barely see the front of the diner. "Can you put your arms around my neck?" Maria asked Alex. "I'm going to carry you, but I need you to hold on tight." Alex nodded and wrapped his arms around her shoulders. He was heavier than she expected, but adrenaline gave her strength she didn't know she had. As she lifted him, she could feel him shaking against her. "It's going to be okay," she whispered in his ear. "I promise." The main dining room was filling with smoke so thick that Maria had to squint to see where she was going. The air was hot and hard to breathe. Every breath felt like swallowing fire. She could hear the flames roaring in the kitchen now, and she knew they didn't have much time. The front door was completely blocked. The windows in the dining room were too high and too small. Maria's mind raced as she tried to remember every corner of the building. She had worked here for 2 years, cleaning every inch of the place. There had to be another way out. Then she remembered the storage room in the back. It was small and cramped, filled with extra supplies and cleaning equipment. But it had a window that faced the alley behind the diner. She had seen Pete use it sometimes when he needed to step outside for a quick break during busy shifts. "We're going to go through the back," she told Alex, her voice muffled by the smoke. "Hold on tight and try not to breathe too much." Maria carried Alex toward the back of the diner, moving as quickly as she could while avoiding the falling debris. The storage room door was usually locked, but in her panic she threw her full weight against it. The old lock gave way and the door swung open. The storage room was slightly less smoky, but she could see orange light flickering under the door that connected to the kitchen. The fire was spreading fast, and soon this room would be just as dangerous as the rest of the building. The window was about 4 feet off the ground, small and rectangular. It hadn't been opened in years, and Maria wasn't even sure if it would budge. She set Alex down gently. "I need you to stand right here while I try to open this window, okay?" Alex nodded, but she could see tears streaming down his face. "I want Elena," he whispered. "I know, sweetheart. We're going to get to her. I just need 1 minute." Maria grabbed the window handle and pulled. Nothing. She tried pushing it up, but it seemed to be painted shut or maybe rusted from years of not being used. Behind them, she could hear the fire getting closer. The temperature in the small room was rising and smoke was starting to seep in around the door. She looked around the storage room for something to help. There were boxes of napkins, cleaning, supplies, and old equipment. Then she saw it, a metal folding chair that was used for reaching high shelves. "Alex, can you cover your ears for me?" The boy pressed his hands over his ears, and Maria swung the chair at the window as hard as she could. The glass cracked but didn't break. She swung again, and this time the window shattered, sending pieces of glass flying into the alley below. Cool afternoon air rushed into the storage room, and Maria had never been so grateful to feel fresh air in her lungs. But they weren't safe yet. She could hear the fire spreading behind them, and she knew they had minutes, maybe less. "Okay, Alex. I'm going to lift you up to the window, and you're going to climb through. There might be some glass, so be very careful." Alex looked at the broken window with wide eyes. "What about you? I'm coming right behind you, but you need to go first so I can make sure you're safe." Maria lifted Alex up to the window. He was brave. She had to give him credit. Even though he was scared, he carefully climbed through the opening, avoiding the sharp edges of broken glass. She heard his feet hit the pavement outside. "I'm okay," he called back through the window. Now it was Maria's turn. The window was small, and she was bigger than an 8-year-old boy. As she started to climb through, she felt a sharp piece of glass cut into her hand. She ignored the pain and squeezed through the opening, her uniform catching on the window frame. Just as her feet touched the alley pavement, she heard a loud crash from inside the storage room. Part of the ceiling had collapsed exactly where they had been standing just seconds before. Alex threw his arms around her waist, both of them coughing and covered in soot. Maria's hand was bleeding from the broken glass, and her lungs felt like they were on fire from all the smoke. But they were alive, and they were safe. "Elena," Alex called out as they stumbled toward the front of the building. They rounded the corner just as Elena was finishing her phone call. When she saw them covered in soot and coughing, her face went completely white. "Alex." She dropped her phone and ran toward them. "What happened? Are you hurt?" "The diner caught fire," Maria managed to say between coughs. "The front door was blocked. We had to go through the back window." Elena knelt down and pulled Alex into her arms, checking him for injuries while tears streamed down her face. I'm so sorry. I should have been watching. I should have known." In the distance, Maria could hear sirens approaching. Someone must have called the fire department. Black smoke was now pouring out of the diner's roof, and she could see flames through some of the windows. "You saved him," Elena said, looking up at Maria with eyes full of gratitude and something else Maria couldn't quite identify. "You saved my boy." Maria slumped against the brick wall of the neighboring building, finally allowing herself to feel the full impact of what had just happened. Her hand was throbbing from the cut, her lungs burned, and her legs felt like they might give out at any moment. But Alex was safe. That was all that mattered. The fire trucks arrived with sirens blaring and lights flashing, followed closely by an ambulance. Maria sat on the curb across the street, watching the firefighters work to contain the blaze that had completely consumed Danny's diner. The building she had worked in for 2 years was now just a shell filled with orange flames and thick black smoke. Alex sat beside her, still holding her uninjured hand. Elena knelt in front of them both, her expensive coat forgotten on the dirty sidewalk as she checked Alex over and over for any signs of injury. Her hands were shaking as she touched his face, his arms, making sure he was really okay. "Ma'am, we need to check them both out," a paramedic said, approaching with a medical bag. He was a kind-looking man in his 40s with gentle eyes that reminded Maria of her father. Elena stood up quickly. "Yes, please. Whatever they need. Money is no object." The paramedic knelt down next to Maria and Alex. "Let's start with you, young man. Can you tell me your name?" "Alex," the boy said quietly. "I'm 8 years old." "Good. Do you hurt anywhere? Your chest, your throat?" Alex coughed a little. "My throat feels scratchy, and my eyes are watery." "That's normal after breathing smoke. We're going to give you some oxygen to help with that." The paramedic placed a small oxygen mask over Alex's face. "Just breathe normally, okay?" Then he turned to Maria. "And you must be the hero I heard about. Let me see that hand." Maria looked down at her hand for the first time since the escape. Blood had dried around several cuts from the broken window, glass, and her palm was swollen. She hadn't even noticed the pain until now, too focused on making sure Alex was safe. "It looks worse than it is," she said, though the paramedic was already cleaning the wounds with antiseptic that stung more than she expected. "You're going to need stitches for a couple of these cuts, and we want to take both of you to the hospital to make sure your lungs are okay. Smoke inhalation can be serious, even if you feel fine right now." Elena immediately stepped forward. "I'll take care of all the medical expenses, whatever they need." Maria looked up at her, surprised. "That's very kind, but you don't need to do that. I have insurance through the diner." She paused, realizing that with the diner gone, her job was gone too, and probably her insurance along with it. "I insist," Elena said firmly. "You saved Alex's life. It's the least I can do." The ride to the hospital was quiet except for the sound of the ambulance's engine. Alex sat on the stretcher, still wearing his oxygen mask, while Maria sat on a small seat beside him. Elena rode in her own car, following behind them. At the hospital, they were taken to the emergency room where a doctor examined both of them thoroughly. Alex's lungs were clear, though his throat was irritated from the smoke. The doctor said he would be fine in a day or two. Maria needed 7 stitches in her hand and had some minor smoke inhalation, but nothing serious. As the doctor worked on her hand, she found herself thinking about what would happen next. Danny's diner was gone. Her job was gone. And she had bills due at the end of the week. "The nurse said someone already took care of your medical bills," the doctor mentioned as he finished the last stitch. "Must be nice to have family that cares about you." Maria didn't bother correcting him. It was easier than explaining that a stranger was paying for everything, because she had saved their child from a fire. After they were both treated, Elena found them in the hospital waiting room. Alex had fallen asleep in one of the chairs, exhausted from the day's events. Elena sat down next to Maria, and for the first time since the fire, she looked truly relaxed. "How are you feeling?" Elena asked. "Tired. My hand hurts a little, but I'll be fine." Maria looked at Alex, sleeping peacefully. "He's a brave kid. A lot of children would have panicked completely. He's been through a lot in his young life. More than most children should have to deal with." Elena's voice carried a sadness that Maria hadn't noticed before. "That's why today scared me so much, the thought of losing him." "But you didn't lose him. He's right here, safe and sound." Elena nodded, but tears started forming in her eyes. "Because of you. If you hadn't been there, if you hadn't acted so quickly." She stopped, unable to finish the sentence. "Anyone would have done the same thing," Maria said. "No, they wouldn't have. Most people would have saved themselves first. You didn't even hesitate." Elena wiped her eyes with a tissue from her purse. "I need to ask you something, and please be honest with me. Are you okay financially? I know the diner is gone, which means your job is gone." Maria felt her cheeks flush with embarrassment. She had been trying not to think about the money situation, but Elena was right. With no job and bills due soon, she was in trouble. "I'll figure something out. I always do." "That's not what I asked. Are you okay financially?" Maria looked down at her bandaged hand. "No, I'm not okay. I was already behind on some bills, and I was working extra shifts to catch up. Now." She shrugged, trying to appear more confident than she felt. Elena opened her purse and pulled out a business card. "I want you to call this number tomorrow. It's our family doctor. He's going to want to check on both you and Alex in a few days, just to make sure there are no delayed effects from the smoke. I already told you my insurance will be taken care of, all of it." Elena's tone made it clear that this wasn't up for discussion. "I also want to give you this." She handed Maria an envelope. "What is it?" "Just something to help you get by until you find another job. Please don't argue with me about this." Maria looked inside the envelope and gasped. There was more cash than she made in 3 months at the diner. "I can't take this, it's too much. It's not enough. It will never be enough for what you did today." Elena stood up as Alex started to wake up. "I know you don't know us very well, but I hope we can stay in touch. Alex is going to want to see you again, to make sure you're okay." Alex sat up and rubbed his eyes. "Are we going home now?" "Yes, sweetheart. But first, let's make sure Maria has a way to get home too." Maria realized she didn't have a car at the hospital. Her old Honda was still parked behind the diner, assuming it hadn't been damaged in the fire. "I can call a taxi." "Absolutely not. Our driver is outside. He'll take you wherever you need to go." As they walked out of the hospital together, Maria noticed how Elena seemed to be constantly looking around, almost like she was checking to make sure they weren't being followed or watched. When they reached the parking area, a large black car was waiting with a man in a suit standing beside it. "This is Robert, our driver," Elena explained. "Robert, this is Maria. She's the woman who saved Alex today. Please take her wherever she needs to go." The driver nodded respectfully. "Of course, ma'am. It would be my honor." As Maria got into the back seat of the most expensive car she had ever been in, Alex pressed his face against the window of Elena's car and waved goodbye. Elena handed her another business card through the window. "That's my personal number. Please call me tomorrow just so I know you're okay." As the car pulled away from the hospital, Maria looked back to see Elena and Alex getting into their own, a vehicle. For the first time, she noticed that their car had tinted windows and looked like the kind of vehicle that important people traveled in. She looked down at the business card Elena had given her. It was simple and elegant, with just a name and phone number. But something about the quality of the paper and the way it was printed suggested that Elena was far more than just a well-off mother figure. Maria settled back into the leather seat, her bandaged hand resting in her lap, and wondered what kind of people she had really saved today. 2 weeks had passed since the fire, and Maria was starting to feel desperate. She had filled out applications at every restaurant, store, and office in town, but nobody was hiring. The money Elena had given her was helping, but it wouldn't last forever. She sat at her small kitchen table, sorting through bills and trying to figure out which ones she could delay paying. Her phone rang and she recognized Elena's number immediately. They had spoken a few times since the hospital, just quick check-ins to see how everyone was doing. Alex had recovered completely from the smoke inhalation, and Maria's hand was healing well. "Hello, Elena." "Maria, I hope I'm not calling at a bad time. I was wondering if you might be free for coffee this afternoon. There's something I'd like to discuss with you." Maria glanced at her empty calendar. Job hunting could wait another hour. "Sure, I'd like that. Where would you like to meet?" You know the Riverside Cafe downtown? It's that little place near the park." Maria knew it well, though she had never been inside. It was the kind of upscale cafe where a single cup of coffee cost more than she usually spent on lunch. "I'll find it." "Perfect." 2 o'clock? An hour later, Maria walked into the Riverside Cafe, feeling underdressed in her simple jeans and sweater. The place was beautiful, with high ceilings, comfortable leather chairs, and the kind of atmosphere that made people speak in quiet, respectful tones. Elena was already there, sitting at a corner table near the windows. She waved Maria over with a warm smile. Today she was dressed more casually than at the hospital, but her clothes still looked expensive. Even her casual outfit probably cost more than Maria's entire wardrobe. "You look good," Elena said as Maria sat down. "How's your hand?" Maria flexed her fingers. The stitches had been removed a few days ago and only faint scars remained, almost back to normal. "How's Alex?" "That's actually part of what I wanted to talk to you about." Elena signaled the waitress and ordered 2 coffees. "He's been asking about you every day. He wants to know if you're okay, if you found a new job, if your hand still hurts." Maria felt a warm flutter in her chest. In the chaos of everything that had happened, she had grown attached to the boy too. "He's such a sweet kid. You're lucky to have him." "We're lucky to have each other," Elena said, though there was something complicated in her expression. "Maria, can I ask you something personal? Have you found work yet?" Maria's cheeks flushed. She had been hoping to avoid this topic. "Not yet, but I'm sure something will come up soon." Elena leaned forward. "I have a proposition for you, but I want to be completely honest about our situation first." Before Maria could ask what she meant, Elena's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and immediately answered, speaking in that foreign language again. But this time Maria noticed something different. The person calling Elena seemed to be reporting to her, not the other way around. Elena's voice carried the tone of someone used to making decisions and giving orders. After she hung up, Elena looked apologetic. "I'm sorry, that's exactly what I wanted to talk to you about." "I don't understand." Elena took a deep breath. "Alex and I aren't exactly who we seem to be. When we came to your diner that day, we were trying to have a normal afternoon. Alex rarely gets to experience places like Danny's Diner, where he can just be a regular kid." Maria felt confused. "What do you mean?" "My husband is—" Elena paused, seeming to choose her words carefully. "He's a very successful businessman. We have to be careful about Alex's safety because of that success. That's why we have security, why we travel quietly, why I'm always on the phone dealing with various situations." The waitress brought their coffees, and Elena waited until she was gone before continuing. "The truth is, Maria, we're quite wealthy. More than wealthy, actually." Maria wasn't sure how to respond. She had suspected they had money, but Elena seemed to be hinting at something much bigger. "Okay. Alex has been having nightmares since the fire. Not about the fire itself, but about losing you. He's formed an attachment to you that his therapist says is actually helping him process the trauma. He rarely connects with people outside our immediate circle, but something about you makes him feel safe." Elena's phone rang again, and this time Maria could hear the caller addressing Elena as Mrs. Kozlov, with obvious respect, and maybe even a little fear. Elena handled the call efficiently, making decisions about something involving the Tokyo office and quarterly projections. When she hung up, Maria looked at her with new eyes. Kozlov? That name sounds familiar? Elena smiled nervously. It might. My husband is Viktor Kozlov. Maria's coffee cup stopped halfway to her lips. Even someone who didn't follow business news knew that name. Viktor Kozlov was the tech billionaire who had started a software company in his garage and built it into one of the largest corporations in the world. She had seen his picture on magazine covers at the grocery store checkout. Your husband is Viktor Kozlov? The Viktor Kozlov? Yes. Maria set down her coffee cup with shaking hands. That means Alex is the son of one of the wealthiest men in the country, yes. Elena reached across the table and touched Maria's arm. But more importantly, he's a little boy who almost died in a fire, and you saved his life. Maria's mind was spinning. She had saved the son of a billionaire. No wonder Elena had been able to pay the hospital bills without blinking. No wonder they had a driver and security. No wonder Elena always seemed to be handling important phone calls. I had no idea, Maria whispered. That's exactly why we were at your diner. Victor and I try to give Alex normal experiences whenever possible. We want him to understand how most people live, to appreciate what we have, and to develop empathy for others. Elena smiled sadly. He's going to inherit enormous responsibility someday. We want him to be ready for that. Another phone call interrupted them, and this time Elena's conversation was about the senator's proposal and lobbying concerns. When she finished, she looked at Maria apologetically. This is my life. Constant calls, constant decisions, constant management of a business empire that affects thousands of employees and millions of customers. Elena's voice carried exhaustion. But none of that matters compared to Alex's well-being. Maria was starting to understand the weight of what Elena dealt with every day. It must be incredibly stressful. It is. Which brings me to my proposition. Elena leaned forward again. Alex needs you, Maria. His therapist thinks that spending time with you could help him work through not just the trauma from the fire, but also the isolation he feels because of our unusual lifestyle. What are you asking? I'd like to offer you a position as Alex's companion and tutor. You'd spend time with him, help him with schoolwork, take him to normal places like parks and libraries, show him how regular families live. Elena paused. The salary would be more than you made at the diner, significantly more. Maria felt overwhelmed. A job working for one of the wealthiest families in the country? It seemed impossible. I don't have any experience with tutoring or childcare. You have something more valuable than experience. You have Alex's trust, and you've already proven you'd risk your life to protect him. Elena's phone buzzed again, but she ignored it. I know this is a lot to process. You don't have to answer right now. As they prepared to leave, Elena accidentally knocked over her purse, spilling its contents across the table. As Maria helped gather everything up, she noticed a business magazine that had fallen out. On the cover was a photo of a man she recognized. From news articles, Viktor Kozlov himself, with the headline, Tech Empire Reaches New Heights. Elena quickly stuffed the magazine back in her purse, but it was too late. Maria had seen it, and the reality of the situation finally hit her completely. She hadn't just saved any child from a fire, she had saved the heir to a multi-billion-dollar empire, and now they were offering her a chance to be part of their world. Maria spent 3 sleepless nights thinking about Elena's offer. She walked around her small apartment, looking at the stack of unpaid bills on her kitchen counter, then at the business magazine she had bought to learn more about Viktor Kozlov. The man on the cover looked serious and intelligent, but she tried to imagine him as just Alex's father, not one of the most powerful people in the world. On Thursday morning, she finally called Elena. I'd like to accept your offer, Maria said, her voice trembling slightly. But I need to know what I'm really getting into. Elena's relief was obvious even through the phone. Of course. Can you come to our home tomorrow? I'd like you to meet Victor, and Alex is eager to see you again. The next day, Maria drove through a part of the city she had never seen before. The houses got bigger and farther apart as she followed Elena's directions. When she finally reached the address, she had to stop her car and stare. The Kozlov home wasn't just a house, it was practically a mansion, with gates, security cameras, and grounds that seemed to stretch forever. A security guard checked her name against a list before opening the gates. As she drove up the long driveway, Maria felt like she was entering a different world entirely. The house was beautiful but not showy, surrounded by gardens that looked like they belonged in a magazine. Elena met her at the front door, dressed casually, but still looking elegant. "Welcome to our home," she said with a warm smile. "Alex has been watching for your car for an hour." Inside, the house was even more impressive. High ceilings, beautiful artwork, and furniture that probably cost more than Maria's entire yearly salary. But despite the obvious wealth, it felt like a real home where a family actually lived. "Maria." Alex came running down a grand staircase, his face lighting up with genuine joy. He threw his arms around her waist in a hug that made her heart melt. "Hey, there, brave boy," she said, hugging him back. "How are you feeling?" "Much better now that you're here. Elena said you might come work with us. Is that true?" Before Maria could answer, a man walked into the room and she immediately recognized him from the magazine covers. Viktor Kozlov was tall and serious looking, but when he saw Alex hugging Maria, his expression softened completely. "You must be Maria," he said, extending his hand. "I can't thank you enough for what you did for our son." His handshake was firm but not intimidating, and his voice carried genuine gratitude rather than the commanding tone she had expected from a billionaire. "Alex talks about you constantly. Elena tells me you might join our family team." "I'm considering it," Maria said carefully. "But I want to be honest. I don't know anything about your world." Viktor smiled, and for the first time Maria could see the family resemblance between him and Alex. "That's exactly why we need you. Alex spends too much time around people who know our world too well. He needs someone who can show him life from a different perspective." They sat in a comfortable living room that felt surprisingly normal despite the expensive furnishings. Alex curled up next to Maria on the couch, clearly happy to have her there. "Let me explain what we're thinking," Elena said. "Alex is homeschooled because regular school isn't safe for him, but that means he misses out on normal childhood experiences. We want you to be his guide to the regular world." "What would that involve exactly?" Maria asked. "Taking him to public libraries, parks, normal restaurants," Viktor explained. "Teaching him how to ride public transportation, showing him how most families live. We want him to understand that the world is bigger than our protected bubble." Alex looked up at Maria with hopeful eyes. "Would you teach me how to play regular kid games? And maybe we could go to a normal playground." Maria felt her heart melt a little more. Despite all the wealth around him, Alex just wanted to be a regular kid. "I think I could manage that." Over the next hour, they discussed details. The salary they offered was more than Maria had ever dreamed of making. It would not only cover her current bills, but allow her to help her mother with medical expenses and even save money for the future. "There is one condition," Viktor said seriously. "Alex's safety is our top priority. You would need to work with our security team and follow certain protocols." "What kind of protocols?" Elena pulled out a folder. "Background checks, security, training, communication procedures. It sounds more complicated than it is, but we can't take any chances with Alex's well-being." As they talked, Maria watched Alex playing with a handheld game that probably cost more than her monthly rent. But she also noticed that he kept glancing at her, making sure she was still there. The connection they had formed during the fire was real, and it was clear that he needed her as much as she needed this opportunity. "Can I ask you something?" Maria said to Viktor. "Why me? You could hire professional tutors, child development experts, anyone you wanted." Viktor and Elena exchanged a look before Viktor answered. "Because when it mattered most, you didn't hesitate to risk your life for our son. You didn't know who we were or what we could offer you. You just did what was right." He paused. "That's the kind of person we want influencing Alex." 3 months later, Maria was sitting in the same public library where she used to job hunt. but now she was helping Alex with a research project about different cultures. He was fascinated by how the library worked, how anyone could come in and borrow books for free. In some countries, not everyone can read, Alex said, looking up from his book about global education. Did you know that? I did. What do you think about that? Alex was quiet for a moment. I think that's not fair. Everyone should get to learn things, Maria smiled. This was exactly what Victor and Elena had hoped for. Alex was developing empathy and understanding for people whose lives were very different from his own. Working for the Kozlov family had changed Maria's life in ways she never could have imagined. She had been able to pay for her mother's surgery, move to a better apartment, and even start taking college classes in the evenings. But the best part was watching Alex grow and learn. 6. Months after she started working for them, the family held a charity gala to raise money for fire safety education in schools. Victor insisted that Maria attend as an honored guest, not just an employee. During his speech that night, Victor told the story of the fire and how a brave waitress had saved his son's life. He didn't mention Maria by name, protecting her privacy, but he made it clear that everyday heroes were all around us. Sometimes the most important moments in our lives happen when we're not looking for them, he said to the crowd of wealthy donors. My family learned that heroism isn't about having money or power. It's about making the right choice when it matters most. After the speech, Alex found Maria at their table. Are you proud of what you did? He asked. Maria thought about it. She had just been doing what felt right in the moment. She never expected it to change her entire life. I'm proud that you're safe, she said finally. Everything else is just bonus. Alex smiled and hugged her. Elena says you're not just my tutor anymore. She says you're family. Maria looked across the elegant ballroom at Elena and Victor, who were surrounded by important people, but kept glancing over to make sure she and Alex were okay. 6 months ago, she had been a struggling waitress, worried about paying bills. Now she was part of something bigger than she had ever imagined. Sometimes, Maria realized, the most extraordinary changes in life start with the simplest decision to help someone else. She had risked her life to save a scared little boy, never knowing that one moment of courage would transform everything for both of them.